To Flourish podcast, and I am your host, Raj Anderson, executive life coach and coach assessor. And as always, I'm delighted to be joined by John Andrew Williams, who is the founder of Coach Training EDU. How's it going, John?
Good. It's been quite a year already, and I can't believe we're already halfway through it. And we have a lot of projects all finishing up seemingly around the same time. So we're in that 90% zone with, I think, four very important projects. So we'll see what happens.
Can you share any sneak peeks with the listeners?
Coach Theory is the big one. It's a coach client matching app. It's through Apple, getting it through Google Play. It's surprising how many things come up in the dev world. All the little nitty-gritty things that we're in it now, testing it a lot. That's going to roll up pretty soon. Uh, Back-end stuff, websites. I know way too much about dev and coding and a lot of things right now. So that's a big thing. And then, most of it's just in our own internal processes, which is going to help, which is also exciting. I'm learning a lot about business automation systems, things like this, and applying a lot of coaching skills to this, quite frankly. So um, the big one is Coach Theory. And when that thing finally rolls out, I will make big announcements for it. We'll have links for everyone to sign up if you want to be a coach or if you want to find a coach. Those I'm imagining will for sure be ready by August, if not sooner. So that's the big one.
Lots of great things happening. So look out for those announcements. There's ongoing webinars and classes that you can join. So check out the Coach Training EDU LinkedIn page and go to the website. What are we up to today, John? We're listening to a demo.
I would have imagined, however, there, based on feedback, people really love it when the person can be here. So this week we didn't have anyone here, so we're just going to take a slight break from the demos, and I thought we could talk about more around what makes a coaching session a good coaching session. And specifically, I think that sample session that you do, or how do you get people even to sign up for your coaching? I think we could talk about what those things today, and then I think next week we'll get back onto the demos. I think we have a couple queued up, and then some people are also showing up
All
in the
right.
next few weeks.
Lovely. One of my favorite things to do is Q&A with John because he always has lots of borrowed insight for us. So if we're starting with that, John, from your perspective, what does a coaching session?
I think I froze for a second there, Raj. What was the middle part?
Yeah, what makes a good coaching session from your perspective?
Yeah. So I think, well, let's break it down to sample sessions, right? So a sample session, which is traditionally when a coach is building their practice, one of the things that a lot of new coaches and even seasoned coaches offer is a sample session. What this generally looks like is, let's say after a workshop or networking event or even some advertising, you have a new lead, someone interested in working to coach with you. One of the most traditional offers is a 30-minute sample session or a 50-minute session. When I first started out as a coach, I would give these sessions for free. When I got a little more seasoned, when I started getting a waiting list, I wanted to make sure that people were really serious about it. So I started charging $50 for sample sessions. And I did that for a very long time, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 years. And I was charging around 130, 200 per hour coaching. It's where I ended up. So it was less, $50 was less, but I found that when I started charging for the sample sessions, uh, I I started getting more people converted, which was surprising to me. But I understand, starting out, people don't want to are hesitant to jump in and charge for sample sessions. What makes a good sample session is if your client gets a very good idea of what it's like to work with you, what it's like to work with a coach, and they sign up to be your client. So there's a very real, like, what makes a good one? Well, one that converts and one that gives them a good idea of what it's like to work with you. Um, what makes a good session later is there are a couple of different ways to look at it, but I think one of them is, is your client getting the insights that they need to naturally take the action steps that they say they're going to take or are very important in their lives. So I think it's a two-part process of a good coaching. The outcomes of a good coaching session are insights and action steps that happen between sessions, both very measurable.
One thing I'm curious about, John, is when you were offering sample sessions and say as a client that you've not had any type of coaching experience or in that environment with before, how did you manage the design the alliance bit?
Didn't really do a lot of design alliance in the sample sessions. I know that some coaches do, and it might be a popular thing to do. I saved the design the alliance for session 2, and I was doing a lot of work with students who had zero experience with coaching, not a lot of experience working with someone who was asking questions without known right answers. So it really was a little bit of training the clients to even what to expect in coaching or even what this was like. So I found that in a sample session, that one of the biggest, most useful things to do is really address the biggest myths that people have about coaching. And the biggest one by far is, oh, like you're going to give me advice or you're here to fix something. It's more like I think people think of a coach more as like uh, this all-knowing advisor or somehow like a life advisor, which in some ways a coach is almost, from our standpoint, is almost exactly the opposite. A coach at their best will not give advice. They will ask questions. They'll ask insightful questions, questions that uh, make you think about things in completely different ways that move you to different places. So I think in a sample session, as a coach, I found I had to really be proactive in saying, okay, a lot of times people have this misconception of coaching. This is what coaching really is like. I was doing a lot of that in the initial sessions.
So it sounds like that sample session is an opportunity to introduce a client to the concepts of coaching, demystify coaching. And what about coaching itself? Did coaching itself take place for you in the sample session?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried at least I did 15-minute sessions. I'd spend maybe 20 minutes doing, all of that. Like here are the myths, here are the things that we're going to get to. And then in the final 30 minutes, all right, let's dive in. Usually I would do future self, core motivation, or wheel of life, an assessment wheel as the one of those three. I liked having all three like in my back pocket in case I needed one. I did a lot with the wheel of life. It's just basically it's an assessment wheel. Looks like, you just look at all the different areas of your life, rate your current level of satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10, and go. I mean, it's just that's simple yet profound. What it does is it helps people really look at their life from a bird's eye view, more of a long-term, midterm perspective naturally. This is a perspective that people don't go to very often, and it's a very coaching rich perspective. So it just hits all the things. It's easy. It's a very traditional thing to do in the coaching world. I would keep it simple. Do an assessment wheel, hit the misconceptions, and really my objective was to give people yeah, of course, to sign people up to get them to be clients. That was there. I found the best way to do that is give them as transparent, as complete of an experience as I possibly could of what the coaching experience was like, and let them make an informed decision on, is this for me or is it not for me? I found if I did that, most of the time people loved it. And if they didn't, that's fine. That's okay too. But I think what makes a good sample session is to give people an idea of what coaching is like.
I absolutely agree. It's that experience, isn't it, versus using a sample session for a hard sell, because the experience speaks for itself and actually sells itself, doesn't it?
Mhm. I'm curious, Roger. So, as an established coach, like, because I mean, for me, it was always like I was always a solo. What I mean, it was always like, okay, me, a new client would come in. Sometimes they were referred, sometimes not. But when you're working more with organizations, and I mean also solo clients, how does this process even apply for, let's say, someone in the executive coaching world?
Absolutely. So I don't do sample sessions. I rarely do them now,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I was going to say this is different. This is a different world. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have done them and I spent a long time doing them. And it's not that I wouldn't do it now either. Like yourself, I would do a 50-minute sample session, complimentary session, whatever you want to call it, like whatever language you want to use, coaches. For me, um, even now, in terms of systems, I always include an intake form in the actual booking of the session. And I purposefully do that because I learned the hard way when I first started out, is that it makes a difference when individuals got skin in the game, right? When they actually are willing to also, even if it's a free session, answer some of those questions. It also used to help me a lot in terms of not having to cover a lot of the Design the Alliance. So, just simple questions like what would be useful for me to know about you? What's your background? Why coaching now? Just a few simple questions built into the booking of it. And sometimes, even though I don't offer free sample sessions or complimentary sample sessions now, often someone might refer someone to me and they book a paid session. And I'll say, yeah, have one session and see how you go. But there's always those questions built into it, in intake form, as I call it. Because then it gives them some level of commitment. There is that seriousness there. When I first started out, you sort of desperate to get your hours, and you're also a little bit desperate to, I've got to take my business to the next level. And there were times when I was in a bit of maybe of a lack mindset. I didn't have great boundaries. I started offering sessions without putting a bit of a process in place, and people thought they were doing me a favor versus it being a service that I was, putting out there to people, and making coaching a serious profession. Am I answering your question there? What am I missing, John?
It's a good, yeah, it's really useful information because in the executive world too, like the coaches I've worked with, almost every single one has some sort of intake form. And I've seen I've seen hundreds of these forms from different coaches. Some of them are very extensive. I think one of the most extensive I've seen is maybe like a 10-page. We're
Wow.
going to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours going over this form, which I mean, frankly, that's overwhelming in some ways. It's not my style of like finding a coach or like doing that with a client. But I know some coaches really like that. It is a different way. It's out there. I've found, let's say it's 10 years ago, I really did not like intake forms. Now I actually like them. I think they are useful, especially if you're working with executive clients or clients who know more about the field of coaching. It works. It's for exactly the reasons you're talking about. Because from an executive standpoint, sure, they can spend some money on a samples coaching session, but the real skin of the game is if they put time and energy and thought into this is what I want to get out of coaching. That's the most expensive proposition in a lot of these things. It's not I mean, I think that's also helpful for coaches to think about is your biggest competition is indifference. It's, oh, I can do this on my own. Very similar though to the difference between if you go to the gym on your own versus if you went to the gym with a personal trainer, right? Almost an identical like feeling of living your life, you know?
Mhm.
So when you're working with a coach, having someone even write down, this is my background, these are my goals, this is what I want to get out of this is extremely helpful. And I would consider that an investment. I like thinking of it that way too, for sure.
Absolutely. And as I'm listening to you as well, if we think about this from um, a sales strategy at the end of the day, what if you're offering that session, you do want someone to sign up following that. And sometimes I have strategy calls with organizations as well, where they might be looking at a program or coaching for their clients. So I don't shy away from adding the question of are you ready to make the investment? That is a question in the intake form.
Did that? You put that on there?
Yes.
Wow. Look at you. That's impressive. I don't think I've ever thought of that, of doing that on an intake. I've never seen that on an intake form. I've seen a bunch of them too. Or
Yeah.
maybe I just never even think about it. Sometimes I don't make them through the whole forms. Maybe that's the end and I don't get there, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, and I learned that from experience because I would have lots of people who are curious and want to chat, which is great.
Yeah.
And it's great for people to want to chat when they're not running their own business and they're in a role where they're getting paid regardless. So they want to chat or they want to bounce off ideas with you. And it's not that I'm not going to add value or give resources for nothing, yet at the same time, I work for myself. Therefore, I really need to weed out, is this a serious conversation? If it's an organization, does this person even hold the purse strings?
For sure.
All of those things.
I mean, we run into the same kind of thing in coach training EDU as an organization. We get on average, let's say 15 to 20 inquiries a day. About half are very strong, and about the other half are they're just initially curious. But it is, I mean, anyone running a business organization knows how expensive it is to field to field the quality of touch points that it requires for someone to feel comfortable in the coach training space. Uh, it yeah, the qualifying question, it's an essential one. Like, how serious are you? Or if you're not serious, we just don't have a lot of time, so
And what is it, John? Isn't it like 7 touch points when you're working with in sales or something like that for bigger contracts with organizations?
I've heard that. I think a lot of it tends to do with the quality of the touch point. I think a lot of it has to do with how closely do you align? Do you have different, what's the level of investment? I found it's, you from a pure standpoint of, if you're asking yourself the question, how can I get more clients or how can I get more business? That's it. It is a useful question to ask. Sure, it brings up answers. A more useful question might be, how can I give more value? How can I reach people and how can I reach more people and give them a little bit of value in different ways? That's a really powerful question. So that perspective shift alone, I think, helps people understand, okay, this is what it's really about.
Mhm.
That seems to me the biggest barrier, both in coach training, people choosing a coach training program, and also people who are choosing to sign up to be coached. So if you're thinking, okay, how do I get more clients? If you're a coach, you're thinking, how do I get more clients? The bigger question is, okay, so how can I reach more people with sample sessions?
Mhm.
All right, so how do I sharpen this? I guess so people, they like what they can understand. How can I make a sample session even more understandable, to people? Like, this is exactly what you're going to experience. And then once you have that, then you can go, okay, how can I find more people to pitch this idea to? Now you're asking questions. You're breaking apart, how can I get more clients, into smaller chunks. And every time, if you're asking, how can I bring value to these people? That's the equation. That's what works.
Yeah. And that's the mindset, isn't it, that can make that shift with actually selling the product. Is if you go in with the mindset of, and that's what always worked for me. This is, I'm coming in here, I am a coach. It doesn't matter whether it's paid session or not. For me, the person that I'm with is going to get that same experience. And people feel it. They feel that energy, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I had a very high close rate with sample sessions. Students, especially, even in the executive world. And I had some pretty, we'll call it, combative, initial sessions with most of the people in the executive world. Like, what is this? Why am I here? What are you doing? What is, like, really, you know what I mean? So I think even in those situations, I found, okay, let's just do a session. Let's just see where we're at with it. And there was no way that some of these people are going to open up about important things. I mean, there's just, I think in the business world, especially, it's the idea of confidentiality and privacy is so primary. It was one of the biggest stumbling blocks initially, especially if I was hired by the organization. But this is precisely why the ICF exists and why the ICF has a code of ethics. And this is one of the biggest benefits I see of treating the coaching profession as a profession, because legally these conversations are not confidential because there's no governing body, right? It's not like counseling or therapy, which, yes, those are confidential conversations because there are state regulations in place. However, these conversations are private, which means that there is an agreement that these things will be kept private. So they can have legal binding if you have a contract that says this. Now, all of this is coming from a life coach, and you have to go and find a lawyer and do your own due diligence on this, and work with someone, which is best practice in these cases. And it's important just to know the lay of the land, to know, okay, this is, if you're getting in the coaching world, these are the things that you need to think about. But once you're there, and you get into a role of giving sample sessions, the level of fulfillment satisfaction is extremely high.
And that's a really important point there, John, as well. Even when I was just running the sample sessions, as I said, there was the intake form. Also, all my clients got coaching agreement, whether it's sample session or not, because then they knew. That also helped me. If you think in a sample session, say if you're only running a 30-minute one, they get the coaching agreement. It actually takes out a lot, because my coaching agreement say this is what coaching is, this is what it's not, this is what to expect. They've already signed that, they've already read it. The booking link has a brief intake form in it. And also the intake questions for me from a sales perspective are strategic, because when you learn about someone and they've put important things in there, and you only have a 30-minute session, but you've read the intake form beforehand, it can help you to make connections and build rapport very quickly, because you can very quickly use their language with them.
Yeah, it's like I mean, it's fairly awesome to think that this profession works. Like when someone is listening to you from an active, empathetic standpoint, has curiosity in front of their mind, they're not going to judge it. They're moving you, you're getting insights. I think the biggest challenge is a lot of the inner critics that new coaches have is, does this even work? And so a lot of the marketing, a lot of that initial conversation is around, I need to prove that coaching works. So a lot of the messaging falls, like you feel that in the messaging. You can feel that in sample sessions. You can feel that in, oh, please, 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 like, please sign up and please get a lot from this so that I can prove that coaching works for all of us involved. But that gets people can feel that. If instead it's, no, this profession, like, it's been proven, like, it works. So if something works like this, the next question is, how can I just help more people learn about it and learn as much as I can about it? And that's the real win. And so that energy shifts. Like, you can almost feel a shift in that. And that's the perspective of, when I'm really leaning into this, when I was at my very best, offering sample sessions, it was, this is a larger movement. This is going to be the future of education. This is going to be the future of when people work in the executive space. Are you in or not? And if you're not, that's fine. I can only really coach 40 people. So I will find 40 people,
Yeah.
And that's how it went, and I feel like that is the proper perspective to be in. And from there, good sessions, you can trust that, for me, the measurement is really the insights. Does the do I the clients I'm working with, do they have, are they coming away with insights, and are those insights naturally leading to action steps? That's my measurement of whether or not the coaching is working.
Thank you, John. And I'm thinking about what unlocked me even when I was in the 2.0 with you. And I've probably shared this before, but I remember what unlocked me was actually detaching from the outcome. Detaching from the outcome, yet going into the session, believing and trusting in the coaching process itself. Because as you said, people feel that. So if you have any doubt or you're not fully in that space of trust, is how can you lean into that, right? Trust in the profession, trust in yourself, trust in coaching. Go in, add to that coaching experience. There's a value add. Detach from the outcome. And John, you and I both sharing that, like, there was never a hard sell. Often I would kind of leave a space at the end and the individual would say, oh, what's next? They would fill it themselves.
I was once, I mean, on a larger level, I was giving a workshop at NYU in Washington Square. This is beginning in 2019. And there I was doing it was like a 2 or 3 hour workshop. And I wanted to, pitch the college and coaching works, and here we are. And I asked for a demo client, and she comes up and she wants to look at Halloween costumes. She and her partner, like just that. And it just felt like, like we're just literally talking about like her different choices of costume. And I'm in front of, I don't know, maybe 150, 200 people. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, this is the worst demo I think I've ever given. It was early in the presentation too. And I'm like, what is happening? What is even happening? And then I had that panic moment of, this is going to crash and burn. And like, all this was happening. And then I don't even know how or what. I had to take a risk. And I said, what's why? Why are we here talking about this? Like, what's the bigger thing here at play? And you could just feel the room, like it just like collapsed, and everyone is like, oh my goodness, like we're here. And she says, well, this, what really is here is my relationship with my partner, and how we communicate around this completely matches, like, do we want to like spend our time together going forward? And it's just, you get to feel it just crack open. And I feel like this happens almost every sample session that you, like, let's say you really need this client, like you're too, you need the client, you need the thing. It's getting to that point where, I need to be bold. I need to ask I need to just say the thing, even if it's, so what's really here? What's real for you right here, right now? What would make coaching worth it? Why are we even talking? It's that level of boldness that I found serves me the best in those do or die situations. Even though it feels scary, it's what I've learned how to do. And that one worked out. It totally paid off. It switched on a dime, and whew.
Thank you for sharing that example, John. Yeah, we've all been there. I've been in a demo before now. I'm like, oh, we're going to do some practice coaching. You're in front of a group of people. And I like you, and I asked the client, like, what does you want to focus on today? And she's like, I need some advice. I'm like, oh my gosh, client. Like, why would you do that in that moment? Yet, as you said, being able to be bold and remain curious. You asked, what is this really about? Similarly, for me in that situation, I said, well, what makes today different? Like, why advice today? And it wasn't about advice at all.
Yeah, I love that. Love that.
So I know we're on time, John, and we could probably keep talking, but how do you want to close this out today?
Just thank you, Raj, for yeah, it's fun to feel like this. I care so much about this profession. Sometimes I think from a like just larger bird's eye perspective, really, like I spent my time like being a coach, like this is what I'm doing. But I think on a larger level, uh, it's about there is a new way I feel like human beings can interact and like design conversation that really helps people move forward. Uh, it's yeah, it's a very powerful place to come from and be in. Just thank you for a lot of gratitude at the moment.
Thank you, John. We're grateful for you and your insights. If you have any questions, you want to learn more, please send us your questions. And we'll be sharing demos again soon. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
So,
Bye, everyone.